Welcome to episode 36 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your host, Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm here with my awesome co-host, Tim.
Well, thank you, awesome Isaiah. This is Timothy Peterson. How are you? Let me just give a thank you to our sponsor at the beginning here, Punch Out To Go. Thank you very much. They're a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. And Punch Out To Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. With their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for punch-out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents. Accelerate your business results. Thank you very much to our sponsor. And Isaiah, back to you. I can't wait to have today's podcast. Who is our wonderful guest?
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. I think we have Kathleen Booth from the Vice President of Marketing from Clean.io, and you're also the host of a podcast. Is it Inbound Success is what it's called?
Yep, the Inbound Success Podcast.
Which I assume
the Inbound Success Podcast. Great. Listeners, please find
that. I assume the Inbound Success Podcast is regarding inbound marketing mostly. Is that a correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's a big umbrella. We talk about a lot of different marketing topics, mostly B2B.
Perfect. So you've got B2B inbound experience. I think you also, which people might not realize, you owned an agency for 11 years, which is pretty impressive, sold that, and now you're on the product side at Clean.io. So tell us a little bit about your background and, how did you even get into all that?
So I have a strange background for a marketer. I spent the first probably decade of my career in a completely different field. I actually worked in international development consulting, and because I had done my graduate degree in two different areas. I had an MBA in marketing and I had a master's in international politics, and I kind of had like this fork in the road. And when I first took the fork, it was in the direction of the international politics, and I spent 10 years doing that. And about halfway through that career, I realized that a lot of the projects I was working on overseas were getting derailed by poor communication. And it opened up this opportunity for me to use my marketing degree more kind of on how do you communicate strategically to build support for large public sector reform projects. And so I started coming back to marketing partly through that career. And then when I got married and decided to have kids, it really didn't lend itself well to traveling all over the world with, babies. And so that's when I really returned to my roots in marketing. And my husband and I started a marketing agency that we owned and ran for 11 years. And I still say that the greatest accomplishment of my life is that we continue to be married after owning a business together for 11 years.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And we sold the agency in 2017. And since then, I would call myself a serial startup marketer. I've been the first VP of marketing, the first head of marketing for a number of venture-backed technology startups in the last couple of years. And now I'm at Clean.io, which is a digital engagement security company. Basically, put simply, we help brands control the third-party code that executes on their websites in order to deliver better user experiences and protect their revenue.
A lot.
It's a lot.
Well, that was great. Yeah, you obviously have a lot of experience. And I think, we'll be able to cover a lot of different topics, but I think we'll just jump right in. I think you wanted to talk about something that definitely has not been brought up before, Tim. I don't think we've even covered close to it.
I can't wait. I can't wait now.
But it sounds like it's a bigger problem than people realize. And I think probably every e-commerce company at some point, has coupon codes and somehow they get out into the ethos. Is that what's happening? So you create a coupon code for like a promotion, or maybe it's just for like a few customers, or it could be anything, right? I guess is really.
Yeah, there are so many different ways that e-commerce businesses use coupon codes. And I know, listeners of this podcast tend to be more on the B2B side. Certainly in B2C, we experience coupon codes all the time as shoppers, right? We get the Bed Bath and Beyond coupons, the famous ones. You go to a website and you see get 10% off if you subscribe to our newsletter. But even on the B2B side, there's a lot of companies that use discount codes for specific customers based on the volume they're purchasing, or as part of their marketing strategy. For example, they may host they may advertise on a podcast and say, we're going to give this code to be used for anybody listening to the podcast. And that way we can track how well our podcast advertising is doing for us. So there are a lot of different reasons that businesses use discount codes, and I would say they're a really important part of the marketing mix, because they're a great way to turn on and off the faucet of demand for your product. But they can be also a very effective way to measure, like in geeky marketing terms, what we call marketing attribution. So basically, in plain English, what's working with your marketing and what's not, especially if you're a business that doesn't have a really fancy like marketing software tech stack. There are lots of software products out there that can tell you what's working in your marketing, but the simplest way to hack it, if you don't have those, is to use a code, because then as soon as anybody purchases anything with that code, in theory, where they came from. But the problem that's arisen, and this is something I just was so fascinated when I joined this company, because it was the first time I had ever learned about it too. The problem is that in the last several years, there have been this explosion of new third-party browser extensions. So you guys listening, I'm sure all know you have your Chrome browser or your Safari or your Edge browser, and you go to the app store in those browsers and you download all your extensions. Well, there are all these new extensions for coupons. So some of the more famous ones are Honey and Capital One Shopping. You've probably seen, I think Capital One Shopping has ads with Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta that have been running.
Yeah, they're very, very weird.
They're throwing a lot of money behind it, and they're growing really quickly. Honey was acquired by PayPal for, I think it was like billions of dollars.
I think you're right.
$4 billion.
Honey is the one I'm most familiar with. I think I gave up on it. I think I used it at one point, and then I was like, this is too annoying. I'm just gonna. I gave up on it.
Well, and Capital One Shopping used to be called WikiBuy, and Capital One then acquired them. So a lot of these large payment companies, these merchant services companies, are acquiring coupon extensions because it gives them an insane amount of data into people's purchasing habits. If you think about that, like they're really buying the data more than anything. So what happens is these extensions get a hold of your codes, and you as the business are thinking, okay, I'll go back to the example of a podcast advertisement. You have a sponsor on this podcast. Had they given you a code to share with your listeners, the presumption would be that it's only people that are listening to this podcast, more or less, that would get that code. So anybody who used it, they could trace that back to your podcast and know that their podcast advertising was working.
I told them to give us a code, but they have a very complicated product, so I'm not sure that they're. I think it's a very negotiation oriented, sale with their product. It's complicated.
Yep. Well, and so what's interesting is how do these coupon extensions get the codes? That's where I think there's a lot of confusion that arises, because most of us, like you mentioned, Isaiah, that you're familiar with Honey and you used it for some time. And most of us, I think, are familiar with these extensions. If we've heard of them at all, we're familiar with them as shoppers more so than as businesses.
For sure.
And they seem awesome for shoppers, right? Like, why would you not want to get an extension that basically pops up when you're on a website and you're shopping and you're in the shopping cart ready to check out, and it comes up and it says, hey, we have 10 coupons. We think we can save you 20%. Would you like us to try them? Like, why not, right?
It's literally free money that you could potentially be getting.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds great. And I'll admit, like, I historically have used them too. It's because it was a no-brainer. And then I started learning more about how they worked, and it kind of gave me pause, because what we learned, and I guess I should back up and say how we learned this in the first place. So our company started in 2017, and our original product was anti-malvertising software, which basically is if you ever go to the website of a publisher, like for example, the Boston Globe, which is one of our customers. And if you're on a publisher site and you click on an ad, and if you've ever experienced a redirect, so like you've been taken to a pop-up that you can't get rid of, or a sweepstakes site or something else, though, that's malvertising. It's malicious ads that are trying to get either your personal information or your money, or it's going to infect your computer. So our initial product protects against that. And so because our script is on the page of more than 7 million websites, and it's always looking at the third-party code that's executing on those sites, because that's how we know an ad is malicious.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of data about the code on these sites, and we started noticing unexplainable action happening. And that sort of led us to discover the behavior of these browser extensions. And chief amongst the browser extensions that were executing on the sites were these coupon code extensions. So what they do when you download them, if you're a shopper, is you have it in your browser, you're shopping on lots of websites throughout the course of the day, the week, the month, what have you. And in many cases, when you go to those sites, you legitimately have a coupon code that business has given to you. Maybe you did subscribe to their newsletter. Maybe you heard on a podcast. Maybe you're getting like a VIP discount because you're a customer who's shopped with them a lot. If you have that extension in your browser and you go to the site and you type in that code, what the extension does is it scrapes it as you're typing it in,
Yeah,
and then
putting it into their bank of it. Yeah, so they're aggregating everyone's coupons and then giving it to everyone else. Basically, is kind of what they're.
Exactly right. And
Yeah.
so it's fascinating. And when I started to like really go, whoa, was we have all this data because we make a product that prevents extensions from auto injecting those codes at checkout. So we're getting all this data on what's happening. And what really gave me pause is I started to see codes like Military Hero 40, clearly designed for somebody in our armed forces to have a discount. Or we saw one that was employee discount 80,
Yeah.
80% off for an employee. My CEO in doing research found a code from one well-known men's clothing brand for $75 off his purchase, and they didn't set a minimum spending amount. And so he was able to get hundreds of dollars of clothing for zero cost.
Could I have that code? Would you mind sharing it right now?
Well, and I should say, I want to make it clear, like he actually reached out to the brand and told them, hey, this code is out there and you need to know about it and stop it. And oh, by the way, I'm returning everything I purchased.
Another good example that you might not even think about is we do codes sometimes, or I know that companies have done codes for testing purposes. Like, oh, let's just create a code to test this out or test out the code. And they might do some crazy code, but then if that code gets out there and it's like 100% off or something, like there's like a free code out there somehow.
Yeah, I mean, we did this with our,
test, you know,
we did this with our employees. We have a swag store for company branded swag. That's an e-commerce store online, and anybody can go to it. And for our employees, periodically we would say, hey, you did something really great. Here's 100% off code to get some awesome company swag as a thank you. It's exactly what you're talking about. Like in our head, it's a one-time use thing that we're just doing for a special purpose.
Subsidy program, basically. Yeah.
Right. So it's really scary when you start to think about, okay, wait, all of a sudden, none of my codes are safe because there are huge numbers of people with these extensions present. The number of people using them is growing really rapidly.
It might be your employees. It could be that employee that uses the swag code, but not knowing that it's going into the bank for all the other people that use that extension.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. So first of all, this is, I think, fascinating to a lot of our listeners because they may not be aware of so many of these things. I mean, Isaiah is right to bring that up at the start. So it's really a lot to soak up. They may not be aware. But, my background also is mixed with marketing and data and a whole variety of things. And believe it or not, I was the chief privacy officer. But back in the early to mid 2000s, when people were just trying to figure out, like, what the heck's going on here? And one of the big things that came out of that was a lot of industry self-regulation a lot of associations, like at the time, the DMA, the Direct Marketing Association, and the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers that acquired the DMA, the NRF, the National Retail Federation. We were all in those meetings trying to figure out what to do. So what is happening now? Are there trade associations? Are there different groups that are working on like self-regulation, or is this something like, how are you raising the awareness and what can happen here?
So nothing is happening yet, which
Okay.
is, and it's because there's such a lack of education and understanding about really how these extensions function.
Mhm.
I think on the surface, and so we have a huge educational curve to overcome. That's part of why I'm excited to be on the podcast today. One of the things that's happening is there's this sense out there that, wait, aren't these extensions great for the customer? So, is stopping them somehow anti-customer? And the analogy that I've used when talking about this is, it is a lot in my mind like what happened with Napster back in the day. When
Mhm.
Napster first came out, everybody thought, this is great. We can all get free music. It's so good for the customer. We're sharing, I
Yeah.
bought it, so I'm just sharing it with you. It's kind of like, I got a coupon, so I'm going to share it with you.
Yeah.
And in fact, what we came to realize is that while we could get free music, there was sort of a moral reason not to do it because it harmed the creators.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to raise awareness about is, yeah, you can share coupons, but should you really? Like, is it right to share a coupon that was intended for an Army veteran? If the person getting it isn't, and I always tell this story of like, I would never walk into a restaurant and say to my waiter, I'm in the Army, can I have 20% off? Because I'm not, I haven't served. And I think that most people would think that that was just inherently wrong to do. But
Yeah.
for some reason in a digital realm,
It's
we don't,
okay.
we're not
I
given
think I
pause
think
by that.
it's so many,
Yeah.
there's so many ethical layers here. You're absolutely right about that. But one thing I would bring up though too is that the flip side is that there are things that businesses probably can do and that you can help them do to have some codes that are available to everyone to share. I mean, because I think that there are reasons to put things out into the world for just for the sake of raising awareness and bringing new customers in and all of that have a clear benefit. I mean, you're right about like, if I'm saying I'm getting a senior discount and I'm not a senior, or I'm a veteran and not a veteran, that kind of stuff is just wrong.
It's just wrong.
And
Yeah.
those, codes should not work. But there may be a piece of this where we can all learn and say, well, maybe there can be codes to inject out into the world that are completely fine to share.
Well, I think that's what I wanted to bring up. You kind of tying into what I think we should talk about is what I mean. I think you're going to explain how you guys solve this, but before you do that,
I hope you can.
I'm assuming that you guys have some sort of solution to this. But before you kind of get into more about what you guys do, like I think just for the B2B companies, what do you think they should be doing? Like B2B e-commerce is in so many ways more complicated because you might have individualized pricing. A lot of our customers, we have to do ERP-based pricing where they have some sort of price list in the ERP, or it's just very customized in the ERP, and then we have to like basically import that or automate that or do an integration where like it displays the ERP pricing on the e-commerce platform, and it's very personalized. So they're not using as many coupon codes in the sense that they're kind of already negotiating their prices in some cases. But there are ones using coupon codes. So what advice would you have for like, whether it's, just general advice for a manufacturer, distributor, for B2B customers to do a good job with coupons without just like killing their margins because they're already negotiating pricing,
Well, so this is interesting. There are different ways that businesses use coupon codes, and it's not always for a discount. So we had one company we've been working with that doesn't use coupon codes to give anybody a price break. They do it to give people a gift with purchase, or like some kind of a reward on top of their purchase. And I think there's ways B2B customers could use this too. But it still has a financial impact on them when that code gets out. Like, I think this is a B2C company, and I think they're literally giving out nunchucks as a funny purchase, a gift of purchase. And so every time somebody redeems that code, they have to send another pair of nunchucks, and there's shipping costs and there's product costs. And so, so I just mentioned that, but it could be, you could also be selling software and using a code to upsell something with that software, like get them a more premium version. So there's a lot of ways that companies use codes. I think the biggest thing I would say is it all has to come back at the end of the day to the very basic question of, are you paying attention to your metrics in the first place, right? Because most of the companies that have come to us for help with this issue have done it because they were looking closely at their data and they noticed something unusual. For example, they might be doing affiliate marketing, and maybe they had an affiliate whose code leaked, and all of a sudden they saw this massive spike in usage of the code. And it's really scary when you're doing affiliate marketing, because a lot of times you're actually paying your affiliate a percentage of the sale. And for B2B companies, if you have a channel, for example, and you're using codes with your channel, that could be one of the considerations you have if the channel earns a commission off of sales. But it all starts with looking at your data. So I would say baseline is make sure you have a way to really watch closely your revenue numbers. If you're using any codes, the patterns with those, like, are there unusual spikes? And if so, do you understand what's causing them? I mean, sometimes there are very legitimate reasons that usage would spike, if somebody did a big promotional campaign or something, but you've got to look at your numbers if you're using them. And you really have to think about what purpose they serve in your overall business strategy. I'm a marketer by background. And so to me, codes have a really important use from a marketing measurement and attribution standpoint. I gave the podcast advertising example earlier. If you're going to use it for that, though, the whole value of the code becomes its ability to accurately tell you what's driving your business. And so that's why I think, especially if you're using it for attribution or for paying an affiliate or a channel partner, what have you, that's where you have to make sure you have measures in place to ensure your codes don't get out where they shouldn't be used.
Yeah, because then the tracking gets thrown off because you think it's the podcast, but really it's just out there and on the coupon code extension or whatever it is. But I really like that idea of, there's kind of like, it sounds like there's two main things that you should be thinking about. One is like a tracking value. So you have this like targeted tracking, like 8% of our customers use this coupon code, and you can kind of like figure out data within the coupon codes. And then it sounds like, I like that idea for B2B specifically, where it doesn't necessarily have to be a discount. It could be an additional upsell. Like, it just got me thinking, we're doing more and more business with home goods. I mean, it's probably not too surprising to you, like home goods is doing really well with coronavirus. So we just launched a major furniture website that we're very proud of. Literally today, I got to go check on it later, make sure things are, the day of launch is always a little bit exciting and scary. But, we've launched a lot of home goods, and it got me thinking, and I actually run an Airbnb business I just started with my fiance. So speaking of a family business, we'll see if we survive our marriage with this Airbnb business.
Home improvement projects, that doesn't cause any argument at all, right?
Yeah, it's been going pretty well. There's a couple stressful days when the setup is the stressful part, like the initial setup. But anyways, when you're buying all this stuff, you get more ingrained in the vendors, and you realize like who's good and who's not at shipping stuff out. And we're actually becoming more of a B2B vendor, because we're technically a business, even though we're a very small business. We're trying to get more like better pricing, right? And I like the idea of like a white glove, because one of the problems, especially in home goods, is specifically, but it could be in any industry, is like that white glove service layer that B2B has. And I think that could be a very huge value for a coupon code. Like, hey, if you use this coupon code, we'll give you free delivery, or we'll come and assemble the furniture in your house. For me being a B2B customer, like that would be very attractive to me. I mean, even our office, I hate when we have to set up the furniture.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, not only that, but like,
I'd be like, I'm buying this, but
yeah. And you mentioned home goods, and we actually have several like home goods companies that are customers of ours. And interestingly, one of the reasons that some of them have come to us is that they're using a single public facing website to sell both wholesale and retail. And they're using codes because of that. They're using a lot of their codes for their wholesale customers to give them their wholesale discount. And that was what drove them to us in the first place, was they were saying, my wholesale codes are leaking to retail customers. Can you imagine like what that does to their margins? It's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So
gotta be brutal. But Tim,
yeah.
you're back. It's good.
I don't know what's going on with my Zoom today. I really don't. I didn't do anything. It just stopped and then came back, and I don't know what's going on. So
I'm actually a big believer, and I wrote on the Magenta website a blog. It was my guest blog. I'm a big believer, and it doesn't always work, that if you can combine the experience. I mean, Amazon did this. Amazon tried to have a separate, I don't know if you remember Amazon's B2B website. It was like B2B, what was it called? It was some weird name. It was like, you guys remember what it was?
I remember.
I remember when I owned my agency, I used to buy business Amazon stuff.
Well, whatever, business Amazon, they moved it all into Amazon, and now you're a business user within Amazon. And I think that's the way to go. If I was running a B2B company, like a distributor, manufacturer, selling hard goods, but I also have B2C, I would build one site, but you have like a dealer's version, but it's all one site, right? Like you have kind of a different experience. But to your point, that the coupon codes could be really important, because you might have B2C coupon codes, you might have B2B coupon codes, and then now all of a sudden it's like this mix could get really problematic, you know?
Yeah, and I think the problem is not only a financial one. What we're starting to discover is it is as much, if not more, of a problem that you wind up with your staff spending an inordinate amount of time just trying to stay on top of it. Like people describe it like a game of whack-a-mole. I was just talking to one company that works with us the other day, and he said that he was spending like multiple hours a week,
Wow.
just like going out to different coupon sites and extensions and trying to figure out which of his codes had leaked, and then going back into the back end of his system, shutting down those codes, generating a new one for whoever they were intended for. Like it's crazy when you think about the cost that time inefficiency has on your business. Like when that person or those people could have been spending that time working on the business instead of like chasing down coupon codes, it's sort of ridiculous.
Well, a couple things that I would just bring in there, and again, as a marketer, right? I mean, a few things to consider. I mean, why are there codes, right? I mean, and again, you'd mentioned a number of these reasons, but there are, you can make a case to really just have codes that are meant to be viral in a sense, meant to be shared. So there are certain codes that you just will create that will be good for your business the more that they're out there in the world. And then the ones that are not going to be necessarily good for your business the more they're out in the world because they're too specific or whatever, you can make them have like very, very tight expirations. You can have a unique coding system so that, I forget what that tool is called now, but every 24 hours it regenerates the code basically, right?
Kind of like a token.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of that word for some reason, right? So you can have other options that are good for your business, and still go couponing. I never tell startups anymore to do like, evergreen codes that are just forever, like, 50 off or whatever is your code, because it'll just be out there in the world in a bad way, even before these extensions. So
yeah, and I mean, just to be clear, like we are very pro coupon code. As a marketer, I believe in coupon codes. I'm also a shopper who likes to get a coupon code, right? We are super pro coupon code. Yep. So I want to just make that really clear. What I think we're seeing though is we're reaching a tipping point where if the extensions continue to operate unchecked, what's going to happen, unfortunately, is businesses are going to stop. They're going to stop using coupons because they can't afford to spend the time and the money, you know,
managing it.
with the problem that the extensions pose. And that's bad. That is actually bad for customers. What's good for shoppers and customers and buyers, what have you, is that businesses can use codes and use them in the correct way where they have control over them and they don't have to spend hours chasing them down. And the other thing I would add to that is that I had somebody the other day say to me, well, shouldn't businesses just figure this out on their own and like do their codes in a better way and not create them in such a way that they can leak? And yeah, in a perfect world, and Tim, you were sort of getting at this, like there are technologies out there that businesses can use to do this in a better way. The issue that I have with it is that the companies that are going to do that tend to be the larger, more sophisticated ones. And, you know, given the world we live in right now, where so many businesses are struggling, and especially lots of businesses that have been traditionally brick and mortar have had to move online to really do well in this new world we're living in. What I would hate to see happen is the smaller, less sophisticated, more early stage businesses that don't have the tech stacks, that don't have the in-house teams that are that savvy, that, you know, they're the ones that are really going to suffer. The ones who will have no problem with coupon codes are the Amazons, Targets, Walmarts, Wayfairs, you know, you name it, of the
They're
world.
gonna hire a team to like just do coupon codes.
That's right. So if we want to live in a world where, you know, it's just the big box retailers that are the ones left, then like, yeah, let's let this problem continue unchecked. And I'm not saying coupon codes are going to put everybody out of business, but the ones who will suffer are the smaller independent retailers, the smaller businesses, whether they're B2B or B2C. Those are the ones that are really going to get hurt.
So how do you solve this? So what do you got?
So you know, we're pretty passionate about this, if you can't tell. And we have a new product called Clean Cart that we're just in the process of releasing. Right now, it's only available for websites built on Shopify Plus, but we're actively expanding that as we speak. And what it does is it's a simple script that you put on your site, and it doesn't stop coupon extensions altogether. What it does is it prevents them from auto injecting codes into the discount code field at checkout. And so most shoppers aren't going to go and search down a code and copy and paste it in. If they do that, they can still do it. We just stop the auto injection, but we also have robust reporting on the back end, so that all those hours people have been spending tracking down codes on different sites, now they can just come to the back end dashboard of our product and see all the codes that are being attempted by the various extensions.
Gotcha.
To know,
So okay, this is code is getting attempted. We should
like,
shut it down or expire.
exactly.
Change
Exactly.
it or whatever. Yeah. So you're giving them two things. One, you're stopping the attacks, and then two, they get the information of what's even happening.
Yeah, and we're very early stages. This is just really the initial version of the product. I think there's so much more we want to add into it, and it'll continue to evolve. But this was the fire that needed to be put out immediately.
Yeah. Is this cleancart.io or is it clean.io, or how do you get this?
Clean.io is our company website, and you'll see Clean Cart right on the site.
Gotcha. So there's a product in the product.
Okay.
Company.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm assuming, do you guys have a Shopify app or what?
We have a Shopify Plus private app right now. So if you come to the site, to the Clean Cart page, you can claim a 14-day free trial there. And we're still early enough that we talk to everybody. We do guided onboarding because we're really still in the learning phase. So we're excited to talk with all the different businesses that are using the platform.
So
Do you have a coupon code to offer our listeners?
We do not have a coupon code.
I couldn't pass that up.
But it's funny you say that, because like we actually do have an e-commerce store that I was telling the story earlier, that we use for our company swag. And we set it up partly because we were like, we really want a way to easily access company swag, but we also want to have a way to demonstrate how these coupon codes work. And so we do use coupon codes on that site.
It's funny because I'm rebuilding our swag store. That's one of our little internal projects for the same purpose. I'm like, well, we like the swag that we have and get it out to people and maybe friends and family. It's hard to get it to like friends and family right now. And
yep,
it's like an experimental place for us to do stuff, because we do stuff for clients, but we can't really experiment on our clients.
No, that's exactly, it's our sandbox that we play in. And just as an aside, it's amazing now, because when I owned my agency, we actually sold swag, and so much has changed since those days. And the site that I built, like I built it myself, I'm not a website developer, on Shopify. and it's a Shopify print on demand site, basically site. And so we don't have to hold any swag inventory, which
Wow.
is so game changing. So somebody can just go to the site and order one sweatshirt and it gets printed somewhere, I don't know where, and sent to that
I
person.
love
It's
that. I love that model. I mean, I remember
unbelievable.
a
We have,
company that, what was it, Cotton Zoo, that was around years ago that got bought up by others. And when I came across them, I'm like, "Ooh, that's a good idea."
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to see that.
there's a lot of them now, I think, with especially Shopify apps. But for our B2B folks out there, because a lot of them, can't use Shopify for various reasons,
Right.
because it's not necessarily the right B2B platform for them. I'm assuming you guys will expand this out to like Magento and BigCommerce and probably Salesforce.
Yeah, so right now, if you go to that page on our site, we have a sign up form for the free trial, but it also kind of does double duty, and it says it right there on the page that if you're not on Shopify Plus, fill it out anyway. And we're building a wait list, and as soon as we expand to other platforms, we will notify you. And in the meantime, occasionally, like once every couple of months, we'll send out updates as far as new functionality on the product, just if you're curious.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's exciting. I think sounds like you guys have a good thing, like a very smart niche right now. So do you even have a competitor right now, or?
There are a few small ones popping up, but it's definitely a whole new area. And I don't know. I'm really excited to be working on it. Like, I'm one of those marketers that has to believe in the product that I'm marketing a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm really jazzed up about this one because as somebody who's worked in marketing for years, it just makes me mad that somebody could mess with my marketing attribution. And it makes me mad as somebody, I owned a business for 11 years. And if I put my hat on as a business owner and I think about all the work that these companies put into building their e-commerce businesses, and to have a third-party extension come on their website and scrape and give out their codes, like that just seems wrong to me. So I'm excited about working on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think I've been on like every side of the equation now, because I've worked with data companies and I've worked with, like, as I said earlier, associations, and working on the data privacy kinds of regulations with the government years ago. And then, and now, we're in this whole other moment, right? And it's just, this stuff is going to continue. I feel like you have got this really great business targeting something, but I have to say, keep that innovation mindset there, because I know that there's going to be something else that pops up that's going to need, another product attached to it, to help out people in B2B and in B2C. I'm sure it's going to come along.
Yeah. And even in this one, I mean, let's be honest, we're a small technology startup out of Baltimore, and we're taking on Honey and Capital One. So it's very much a David versus Goliath situation. And we're fully expecting that they're going to try to stay one step ahead of us. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
What I would say too, and do you know the folks at Zero Fox in Baltimore? The wonderful,
I do.
they're pals of mine, they're former clients, the big cybersecurity, biz. And a lot of the things that you're saying here just like click to me as like in the cyber world too, because you're in there, right? You're doing something that
Our product manager came from Zero Fox.
I will talk about that off our podcast sometime, because I have to say that I'm genuinely impressed with them. I've known them for a very long time.
It's a great company.
And they've been in the middle of so many interesting things. And what you're doing is so much related to the world of cybersecurity in a lot of ways. It's attacking this one thing, right? But it's so much in that world.
You're spot on, actually. And it is a cybersecurity company. And I actually came out of cyber. My last two head of marketing jobs were in cyber companies. And that was one of the reasons I came here. But it's not, we're selling cybersecurity to marketers, which is a totally different play. And so we don't tend to talk about it as cyber, even though it very much is. You're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in my head. After working with Norton and Symantec and Zero Fox and all these people, it's just like I'm thinking, like the wheels are turning while you're talking. It's great stuff. It really is.
So I wanna talk about it sounds like you have a lot of experience in this, and I think what people in B2B struggle with, and I think they really should almost rethink, because a lot of them are still in the kind of offline mindset of pricing and coupon codes. So it's like, all right, like a lot of the B2B companies we work with, it's like 80% offline. So they might be getting, people are literally calling them up, like, I want 20 chairs or 20 laptops, or setting up, it's a very manual process. And now as this moves online, what advice would you have for a B2B company around price? I mean, I think coupon codes is almost just a small piece of pricing. Like, how would you think about pricing from a B2B e-commerce standpoint? And
Well, you just raised a really great question, and pricing as it relates to coupons. When you think about moving from offline to online, there's a really big difference, which is that when you use coupons offline, they are generally used in what in marketing terms we refer to as the top of the funnel. So you're sending coupons out to people in the hopes of sparking an interest in purchasing or tipping the scales and getting them to say, maybe I'll get that now, if they weren't already planning on it, right? You're using it to get them to come to you in the first place.
it's almost like an old Google ad, like before Google ads, like, hey, we'd send mailers out with coupons.
Money mailers, right? We all get the money mailers for the roof services or the lawn guy, whatever. That's traditional offline couponing is a top of the funnel demand generation strategy. The issue when you move to e-commerce, when you move online, it's totally different because generally you can certainly use them top of the funnel. We gave the earlier example of the podcast advertising, but a lot of times coupon codes are used in e-commerce at the bottom of the funnel where somebody's already on your site and you're using a code to try to get them to just take that last step, right? Sometimes they're in your shopping cart and maybe you have a banner that says get free shipping or what have you. And that's actually part of why the extensions are so dangerous, is that with extensions in particular, somebody is on your site and they are in your shopping cart and they are ready to check out. They've basically shown that they intend to purchase. And so giving them a code at that moment, most of the time, isn't going to affect their decision to purchase. They've already made that decision. All it's doing is eroding your incremental profit margins. So you have to really think through, in the offline world, codes were used very differently at the top of the funnel. Online, especially with extensions, they're being used right at the very, very, very bottom of the funnel, when really they're not having the impact that a code would be intended to have.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also for pricing for B2B, I think, and Isaiah had said this earlier in our podcast, a lot of the folks I've worked with, it's really that discussion about, volume, the size of an order, whether maybe it's their first order, so you're trying to get something to happen for this B2B customer. But, if the coupons are out in the world that are of a particular type, or there's just pricing without coupons, that is very clear that you get something by spending $10,000, in the first quarter of your business with us, then, it really creates a pattern that's better for the business, right? You're not going to have these issues where it's the 50% thing that you're terrified somebody's going to find and use, right? It's a very different kind of model.
Yeah. I mean, pricing is a whole science in and of itself. For this product that we sell, I just went through a pricing exercise. It was SaaS pricing, but I think it applies in many cases similarly to how we think about e-commerce pricing. You've got volume-based pricing. There's different customer segment-based pricing. We already talked about wholesale versus retail, but there's also different classes of wholesale customers.
For sure.
Pricing is such a powerful tool that can be used to incent purchase behavior, whether that's making an individual purchase, making that first purchase, or influencing the volume of purchasing. There are a lot of different ways it can be used, and it is so important to get it right. And that's why I think having these disruptions from outside influences, whether it's through your discount codes or through something else, can be so damaging to businesses. Because if you get pricing right, it gives you a lot more control over the flow of revenue. So anything that takes that control away is bad.
Yeah, I guess what I would be curious to know is how would you, as a B2B business, let's say as you're starting to build those wholesale, we're seeing definitely typically more than one wholesale price. Like you might have retail, then wholesale one, and then a bunch of levels. And then you might even have like custom one-to-one pricing for like the larger customers. How would you incorporate, or where do you think they should be thinking about coupons in that mix? Like, is it maybe more the lower tiers and less on the higher tiers, or do you think across the whole mix they should be thinking about like, okay, how do I use a coupon code for?
You know, it really differs business to business. Some of the different use cases I've seen, we have one right now that I can share for our company. So we have an enterprise level customer. Think of it, the equivalent would be high volume wholesale,
Yeah.
who has said that they're a very well known brand in their space. And as soon as we onboarded them, they said, if this product works well for us, we're going to tell everybody we know. And we have a referral program. And so, you refer a new customer and you get whatever it is, like $100 off or a month free or what have you. So sometimes codes are used for referral purposes like that. And you're quote unquote paying the referrer in the form of a discount. So that can be a great way to drive business from some of your more loyal customers, especially if they're well known within their industry. So that's one that we've seen in our own business.
That really works across any level, I think. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly, advertising, as I said, whether it's podcast advertising or any other niche form of advertising, codes can be useful. I've also seen it used a lot at conferences or trade shows. If you not only, you might have a booth, but if you have somebody from your company speaking, it can be very powerful as part of their talk to say, if you go to our site and use code, saw John at X conference, you get either a discount or we talked earlier about like a gift with purchase or some kind of upsell or other incentive or white glove delivery or whatever it is. That can be a great way to track purchase behavior back to a talk at a conference.
I like that a lot. I mean, as coronavirus ends, let's hope.
Yeah.
Say we start going back to
there are virtual conferences.
Yeah,
we know we co-hosted the
Yeah.
virtual conference, had a great time.
Yeah, we do. But as you go back to the in-person conferences, I like that idea of like, that's where a lot of these B2B companies are, and they could have like a conference level coupon code. And I think that they're struggling with this transition. That's why we did this podcast, is like they're so used to the sales rep and that relationship, and now it's getting all driven online. But you could still have the sales rep. I like that idea. Maybe you could have a sales rep individualized coupon, and they give that out, and then you see like who are all the people buying from that sales rep.
Well, one thing I would bring up too that ties in exactly with what we're talking about. I've heard people using them like for demos, right? So you have these codes that go out in the world, and then people are getting to a place to schedule a demo, and then the demo has to happen in order for some code to be put out there. So some legit like discount or something for a service or for a product. So that's great for a lot of businesses, right? They're just getting more activity because somewhere that code got out there, but it leads to an appointment. Right.
Yeah. And the last one I would add, which especially during COVID, I think has become more and more relevant, is I know myself personally, I'm a member of a lot of different professional groups on Slack. And like I'm in one that's all other CMOs and VPs of marketing. And there are a number of B2B software companies that will sponsor this Slack group, and they'll come in and they'll say, use this code to get 20% off a subscription to our product. And it's a B2B sale. And they're doing it in what seems like a walled garden of a closed private Slack group. And that can be a great way to then track that lead back to the Slack group. And I think a lot of those online communities have really popped up in the last year since we can't network in person. And so I do see businesses using that a lot more to track.
People do it on Clubhouse too, on Clubhouse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Or social media, obviously, of course. Yeah. No, that's a great idea. So it's funny because we're almost out of time, and you said you're like, I don't know if we're going to need that many more topics. So you're right. There's a lot more to it than we were probably anticipating. But what do you see? We like to ask people towards the end, like, what do you see kind of coming down the road in B2B e-commerce and this intersection between, like you said, there's more and more of this intersection too with B2C and B2B. That's one thing we've talked a lot about, where it's like, I think you're going to see almost more of like this, instead of it being B2B or B2C, it's like small, medium, large orders, right? It's like, it's really just like volume of purchases is kind of the main difference between B2B and B2C, and
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I see coming, and I just had a conversation the other day that is the perfect example of this, is I think more businesses are going to start to think of themselves as e-commerce, especially in the B2B realm, whereas they haven't in the past. And what sparked this thought in me is that the other day I had a call with someone who said, I'm really struggling because I work for a company that sells to e-commerce businesses. And a lot of them are software, but they don't think that they're e-commerce. They think they're SaaS. And it was just a very interesting conversation because they're really both. If you have a shopping cart on your website, if you're selling your product online, you are e-commerce. And I think, and in the past, there's been this like artificial divide that we've put up where you almost need to see that little shopping cart symbol on the site for it to be called e-commerce. But from a functional standpoint, e-commerce is much bigger than what we've, I think, thought of it as. And so I do think going forward, especially with, they say that COVID has sped up the move to e-commerce by something like 10 years. I think that's also going to make a lot of other businesses that have traditionally had an online component to their business rethink how they are classifying themselves. And that's going to change their approach to the way they handle their website, their marketing, the way they think about their strategy, et cetera.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And I think e-commerce, you could really describe it as like, all right, are you taking payments through your own website? And if you're taking payments through your own website, you're essentially selling product or services online. I guess you could argue if it's a third party, but if they're going to your website and paying, it's essentially e-commerce, right? Like you're essentially, and I think if you think about it, that's probably where people are expecting to go. Like to have to physically pay kind of feels like a burden more and more, right? Like, I gotta call.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the phrase I've heard used to describe it is touchless commerce. And maybe that is the better phrase because e-commerce has had this connotation that I think a lot of businesses, like I said, SaaS in particular, haven't wanted to call themselves e-commerce. But when you think of it as touchless commerce, that's a large umbrella that encompasses all the businesses that are doing exactly what you're saying. And I really think that's the direction that companies are going to have to go.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
We're going to have to find words that have full at the end instead of less, because it's headless and it's touchless, all of these things in commerce, but it's really
touchful commerce.
Right? I mean, there's like something that's got to be filled up instead of removed, right?
Yeah.
We'll have to come up with that next podcast. So, I want to thank you too. This has been great, and our listeners are really going to appreciate this because the kinds of things that we hear back from folks who actually do listen to the podcast, and there are a lot more people all the time. Those folks really want to hear something new, something they weren't, really aware of before. And this just, fills the bill. People didn't know a lot of this. I certainly didn't know as much about this before our podcast. So I really appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. And I didn't know a lot about it before I, joined the company, and it's just been a fascinating ride to be on. And I'm excited to let more people know about how all of this really works, because I do think it's important for e-commerce brands to understand.
We'll have to have you back when you've signed up a bunch of the big B2B companies, and then you know a lot more about what's going on.
Well, we are collecting a lot of really fascinating data, and we haven't started publishing it yet. But if you're interested in following along, do track that on our site, because we're starting to have great data on coupon code usage patterns and how it affects conversion rates and all kinds of nerdy e-commerce marketing stuff that I love. So if you're into that too, my fellow nerds, come follow us there, because we'll start publishing a lot of that.
It sounds like a good inbound content marketing strategy that you guys have going.
Yeah. I mean, it's data nobody else has. So.
Well, thank you so much. And we will get you back on, and we'll be checking out our site. So clear.io.
Clean.io.
Clean. Why did I say clean? Oh, sorry. Clean.io. Clear, we know, is a whole other business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.